So we'll call the meeting to order a little bit early and get rolling. The first item on the agenda is the discussion about reappraisal. So we were having some discussions last week and thought that relative to the volume of inquiries that were coming into the staff and the office, we thought maybe it'd be good just to have a kind of an update on where we're at and kind of provide some information and discussion for select board members if there are any questions. I mean, the process is largely being run by NEMRIC, and the informational hearings, which is kind of like the first opportunity for folks to request some face time with NEMRIC, started today. And so we asked Kari and Meadow and Tegan to just kind of start compiling frequently asked questions, see if there were any themes, and see if there are any kind of opportunities to assist in getting information out there, though a lot of the information is pretty readily available. So with that, there was a reappraisal documents tab in the share drive that covers a lot of the informational documents that just kind of summarizes the various inputs to the process and results of the reappraisal, as well as the frequently asked questions document that sounds like it was prepared by NEMRIC. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to kind of dig into that a bit. I didn't have any specific questions. I do want to thank you, Kari, for keeping your eye out for the questions about the exempt parcels that will impact.
Jamie raised that issue, actually.
Yeah, well, thank you to whoever brought that up. I mean, that is very important information.
Yeah.
And it does look like there are, a couple of instances where it's worth having a dialogue with NEMRIC around how they got to that.
I thought 4 actually, but 2 of them are significantly higher than average. So I thought it was worth a discussion to find out what's going on there. Because mistakes do happen. We've already seen a couple of those. It's at least worth asking. And we are on the hook for the education tax portion of that.
Right.
Yeah.
And forgive me, I read through the memo and overview, but the informational hearing that you have scheduled for those parcels, is that today or
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay.
There's 4 of them actually, 4 15-minute sessions.
And Kari and I are both talking about
Okay, great. I'd be curious to see what the kind of results of.
I can send out an update.
If you want to send around.
Yeah, because if we want to grieve them for any reason, we'll need to move pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Those hearings are coming up mid-May. Yeah.
So I guess, Kari, was there anything else to add or commentary that you wanted to add to that?
I think, once people understood what the process was and how they can learn more, or even just look at their lister card, new and old, to compare, that took care of most of the questions that staff could handle. Other questions have to be handled by NEMRIC as to their methodology. The one trend I highlighted in the memo was that a lot of the larger increases are land-only parcels.
Yeah.
And that appears to be a function of just the new values that NEMRIC is assigning based on the real estate market is just that much more than properties with homes on them as well. And in some cases I've seen the land rating has been changed. Grade.
On 5 pieces of property that I checked, every single one of them had the land grade changed. The land didn't change. The land doesn't change. I don't know why they changed the grade. The house could change.
Is it because of surrounding?
No, the grade is the grade. The grade is, what steep
Developability.
Yeah.
Well, one explanation I have that I got from John McCullough is that NEMRIC's using a tighter high and low, ceiling and floor on that grade. We had properties that were as low as 0.3 if they were very inaccessible or steep.
Right.
And NEMRIC only recognizes down to 0.5. And then on the other end, we had a property that John told me was like 4 or something. It was very high because of its views mainly, and they're only recognizing a high of 2.0. So that's part of it. But I think anybody who's in that boat that has an increase in their land grade should ask questions.
Have there been other insights, I guess, or issues or questions that have been raised by the listers that would warrant some airtime? I mean, I think an interesting conversation came up when we were discussing last about, parcels that are like landlocked or have kind of a uniqueness to them that might have seen a grade improvement that, I think from a 30,000 foot view rationalize that, but relative to our land use regulations probably wouldn't warrant that kind of upgrade. And I was just kind of curious if there's any more dialogue around that.
I have not heard that. One of the impacts of that, the increase in land grade on something that's not accessible, in addition to the increase in just generic value, applying that, I've heard people say, well, I could never sell this property for as much as you're assessing it for.
You'd be surprised, I think.
Yeah.
But I've heard it a few times now, so I think, that's something to be aware of. And the other thing that's interesting is that if you apply our last CLA factor, the common level appraisal, it did a very good job of forecasting what the new business would be. Very good. In fact, it may be that they're working towards that. They're tinkering. Nemrick, that the listers indicated that might be the case. So I tend to ask them about that. But anyway, it was predictable if you were just looking at the CLA that the overall would go like that.
One of the, I guess, the remaining kind of lingering questions that I have is obviously the last appraisal process was 2015. That's a long time, and structurally they were very different. Like that one was more of a value assessment, and this one was much more intensive and included inspections and that sort of thing. And aside from like the state dictating how frequently these things need to take place, is there a more proactive process that we could adopt, or a policy or something like that?
I don't think you'd want it happening more than 10 years, every 10 years, would you?
Well, I guess the argument in some of the other states, I know New Hampshire has a reappraisal requirement every 5 years, and then that just kind of avoids these significant jumps. But for
not,
for us, that
I think Vermont's law is 6, but it's so hard to find.
it's so hard to get the appraisers.
So, yeah. I know that I overheard the listeners saying today that they thought that the statistical analysis that was done 10 years ago was probably at least as accurate as the methodology that was performed. And I said, well, at least when you're there inspecting, you might catch something that wasn't incorporated into the data somehow, like if someone didn't get a zoning permit, for example, before construction, and they said, they haven't experienced very much of that. So, I don't know, that's something to discuss, other strategies to glean from this, I'm not sure.
Well, are there other questions or topics that anybody has on the subject matter? I mean, I don't know that there's much more that we can do other than try to keep an eye on how the hearings seem to be going. And I guess plan at some point in the not too distant future having some sort of regroup with our listers and see if they have particular inputs.
We had talked about inviting the listers post grievance hearings, so basically the process is complete. But
It'd be interesting to know if you get calls in the office over the next couple days from people who had information sessions today and tomorrow.
Yeah.
just like if we're getting feedback from people who went through that process, either
Okay.
positive or negative.
Yeah.
Just-
We were making notes of the calls we got over the past week, but now
Yeah.
people have had hearings, so
Yeah.
I hear something different.
Yeah.
But it really dropped off after Monday.
Yeah, for the
last
day
week, right?
one, the first
Yeah.
morning was the most intense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, with that, thank you for pulling together all that information, Kari and
Yeah.
Meadow. And we'll move on to the continuation of our local housing development conversation. And we've got members of CVRPC here today to kind of continue that on. And I guess for context for you guys, if you haven't already gotten it from Kari, but essentially we've kind of committed post town meeting to carving out some blocks of time to kind of take this up as a recurring agenda item, invite folks in to have some strategic conversations around what we might be able to do as a regional municipality to help be part of the solution. So it's largely been kind of information gathering. We've had a couple of members of the community who've kind of taken this subject matter on as a kind of an investigative analysis, looking for solutions and opportunities in organizing to a certain extent. So thank you for coming. And my understanding is that we've got some maps and some AU dialogue to kind of talk through. So we were, really interested to hear what CVRPC is working on relative to the subject.
Sure. How do you guys like to do it? Sit in the middle?
I mean,
Yeah, so you don't have to be
sure.
around.
All right, so information gathering at this point. So there's not sort of a stage or a place in the process you all want to start. Just kind of want to hear what's going on.
Yes.
Yes.
I think that's fair.
And especially success stories, if you've seen examples where
Okay.
people
Yeah.
are doing
Things that look
things that are
promising,
working.
yeah.
Yeah, so I guess if I were to kind of highlight the greatest hits that we've got so far from the last couple of meetings, there's kind of the usual analysis of town plan, zoning regulation, the areas of conflict between the two. How do you prioritize one area versus the other? Funding is a huge question. Strategies for developing multi-use properties or incentivizing current property owners to consider adding other dwelling units to their existing property or subdividing in areas that the town has identified as the best places to have that kind of activity take place. But really, it almost, there's kind of this recurring frustration of we don't know what we don't know, and we're a small community with limited resources and a state with limited resources, et cetera, et cetera. What are some of the realistic and tangible things that we could potentially be considering doing as a municipality that are within harm's reach? And where might there be some relatively local success stories of either incentive programs or community projects that have worked?
Sure. Oh, I can jump off there.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of do this in two parts. We have Brian online, who's been doing the mapping work behind the scenes. We're approaching a regional future land use map, which is one of the new requirements under Act 181. Not one of the more controversial pieces of it, but still falls under that moniker of Act 181. And I'll start first on some programmatic issues, maybe that can kind of pepper the conversation. Basically, I'm starting from the assumption that here in Calais, there's probably a housing shortage, probably an affordability crisis, and there likely is a mismatch between the households and the housing units. That is, the people living in the house and the number of bedrooms they need
Right.
versus the building stock itself. There are some programs out there that seem to be more effective than others at addressing this, or at least are growing faster. So ADUs, as you mentioned, we have seen the ADU development as a bright spot in many municipalities where over the course of a 5-year period, you might see more ADUs permitted than you do single-family households or multi-family households. I can't explain necessarily what that is, but I assume it has something to do with the desire to stay on one's land, maybe open up additional income, or start thinking about downsizing longer term. CDRPC has published an ADU guidebook. We didn't write it ourselves. We created it from another RPC. But it's a really good starting point for a landowner who might be thinking about going that road, and talks about everything from permitting to, in this case of Calais, it's going to be sewer and septic, state permits, beginning to put down a spreadsheet on economic viability from rental income, pricing out costs, which even 2 years after we published seem a little out of date. But it at least helps a private landowner walk through some of those ideas before deciding to go further and necessarily contacting an architect or a general contractor, et cetera. So I can definitely share that out with Kari. You can make sure it's available for anyone who's interested who comes by. The second piece of this, which kind of dovetails or at least certainly overlaps with the ADU conversation, is this idea of missing middle. This big push at the state level and funding for programs and trainings around developing or expanding the missing middle market in Vermont. Missing middle is that housing that ranges from somewhere between those large apartment complexes and single family households. So that could include some duplexes, quadplexes, in a more urban setting, townhouses, cottage developments, or even tiny homes. But slipping these building typologies kind of seamlessly in among existing single family households. So thinking of looking at your neighborhoods in Calais and saying, all right, we'll show the ones that both have the space for septic, but also would be accepting to new clusters of these smaller spaces. You mentioned some success, so just wrapping that up, on Missing Middle, Department of Housing and Community Development has a lot of resources under their Homes for All initiative. I'll send you a link to that if you guys haven't found your way there to start with, which includes some stuff like, what do they call it? It's the 802 Homes program, which provides a set of like 10 pre-permitted designs, which the idea is you come in, you grab, hey, I like that one. The town's already agreed that's a pre-permitted design. It doesn't have to go through whatever design review you may or may not have in Calais. So looking towards some success stories, unfortunately there aren't any, I think, that would be particularly applicable to Calais. You do have some larger scale developments. I don't hear you're looking for a large development necessarily. That might be something to consider if there are suitable soils for community septic. But I don't hear that's what you're looking for. So
I just want to say, we can learn from all of it, is what I would say. I'm not saying, I don't know that I haven't heard anyone talking about something large,
Right.
but I don't know what you mean by large, and I also think there's
right.
aspects of it that would be of use to understand.
So community septic or sewer, I forget what they call it, is usually 24 or fewer residents.
Okay.
So it could be looking at an existing neighborhood or village, hamlet, saying We have 15 existing structures in this village. Are we in a position where we could finance a community septic and then fill out another 10 units, potentially in that same geography, by lowering those costs by providing a shared infrastructure? So that's an example where it's not necessarily a big thing. It could also be a big greenfield development where you put in one system and 25 brand new
Right.
housing units, whether that could be a mix of multifamily, tiny home, single family, whatever the plan and zoning dictate.
Just kind of curious, conceptually I'm familiar with those and aware of like a handful of projects where those have been installed, and we've heard a couple of times, don't, just because of the scope and intensity of it, don't necessarily write it off as something that isn't feasible. I'm curious whether or not offhand whether or not those have generally come with like special assessment districts that are kind of attributed to the servicing of those systems, kind of in that like interim period where you have something that's maybe helping move the needle for the broader community, but dividing the cost of something that acutely focused in servicing.
I don't know.
It's a squishier subject, if you have like an area that you've identified adjacent to a village that has 5 units and could handle another 20. It seems like that could be hard to make a compelling funding argument for unless it was being supported entirely by grants, as opposed to something that might be just a green field that has ideal soils that's adjacent to a school or something like that, where you might be able to just kind of wrap it up into the project.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the call I would make would be to the town of Berlin, where Ripperton was pursuing a similar model at least a few years ago. We haven't talked to them recently about it, but that's a small hamlet scaled development that I think would closest, that's in my mind, that's the closest that kind of fits your existing villages, thinking of housing. But we can find more information on that.
Thanks.
And then in terms of some other programs that municipalities have pursued, East Montpelier, it's similarly rural community, has set up a revolving loan fund for housing development. Now sometimes that could be a small loan to help a existing household make the improvements they need to their house to keep living in it. It could also mean the improvements they need to potentially create additional units. And then there's obviously some lien where when they sell, it's repaid to the revolving loan fund. Various cities also started one, but they're more urban environments, so I pointed to the East Montpelier example. And both those revolving loan funds are housed within Down Street. So they basically are partnering with an organization that just has the know-how to run the residential focus revolving loan fund, and then they just have to figure out how to select projects. And in case of Berry City, they seed funded that with $500,000. I don't know how big East Montpelier is, maybe $250,000 in development, but I could be wrong.
And when you say they, you mean the town?
The town, the municipality,
Okay.
in both cases funded that. I'm unaware of grant funding to do something similar for housing, but it could be out there through HUD. It's possible. Montpelier has a housing trust fund. Similar, I don't know if those are given out as grants. I should look more about that. But that's something they're thinking about exploring, whether it be to support their housing development. Again, it'd be smaller in scale. It could be, and I'm not speaking for Montpelier, but that's the kind of thing that could be used to, say, cover closing costs for a first-time buyer, right? That can be $20,000, $30,000 on a family home right now. So those are some tools local municipalities are implementing. to try to address this. Obviously, from a planning perspective, it's more macro in scope, takes longer for the effects to take place, but is a little closer to the bread and butter of our work. And that's somewhere between that town plan and town zoning regs, how they fit together. And with that, again, unless I have specific questions right now, I can hand it over to Brian. Would you like to see some early drafts of what the maps are looking like for Calais?
Yeah, I mean, I always love looking at maps. I'm sure.
You guys don't mind training your maps?
I mean, I think.
And Brian would be able to share his screen. And yeah, Brian, link those two pieces both to how the region is thinking about some of the land use planning and potential incentives the state has activated through reduced Act 250 requirements, and where some of those land uses fall in, or land areas fall within Calais, and how the town can think about that and comment on it or request changes. So that's all yours, Ryan.
Great, thanks, Christian. Before I jump into the mapping, I did want to mention one other program. I don't think I've ever talked to you all about this when I've been wearing my natural resources hat, but the Department of Environmental Conservation also has a program called Whisper, and basically, if there are municipalities that are holding those clean water state revolving funds, they can actually fund infrastructure projects outside of their municipality. So we've, Lincoln and I have looked at that as an opportunity a couple of times, but it really helps if you have a defined project in mind. So if there is a particular infrastructure need, we can at that point reach out to the DEC, but also start looking for partner municipalities that might be able to provide that design or implementation funding for the infrastructure. So again, not going to build houses for you, but could help with certainly with wastewater or potentially even drinking water infrastructure, if that's something that the town was interested in pursuing. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me and we can talk more about that offline. So
Thank you.
yeah, so I'll just talk really briefly about the regional future land use map. I'll show a couple examples of, kind of where we're at in Calais. But before we jump in, I just wanted to, highlight a couple of big picture items. And really it's that, Calais has the same set of issues that many of our other municipalities do, in that the historic locations of development are directly adjacent to surface water, and certainly made sense a long time ago, but changing conditions, increased development in upland areas, changing flood dynamics, recent flooding in the last several years has really been an eye-opener, I think, for a lot of our communities in terms of thinking about where they want to develop. So, why I bring this up is that in the context of the regional future land use mapping effort, and I did come out, Nikki and I came out, I can't remember now, I think it's probably been 4 or 5 months. So I wasn't planning to detail all the land use classes, but if folks have questions, please don't hesitate to ask about that. So, we're working on this map, classifying the entire region into 10 different land uses, the state designated village centers, designated downtowns, etc. All of those legacy state level programs. Those areas are essentially grandfathered into this future land use map. And the intent is really that we're trying to steer development towards those already developed areas, as well as locations that have been planned for higher density development in the future. One other issue that that many of our rural communities have, in addition to the proximity to flood hazards, is that the historic village centers were quite compact and then surrounded by agricultural and forestry lands. And so a lot of the areas that we'll look at, you have that compact existing village center or historic village center, historic designated area, and then it's surrounded by land, a lot of which is enrolled in the current use program. So that makes it difficult when we're mapping to be able to justify putting those lands, the current use lands in particular, into one of these classes that's slated for a higher level of development because of the financial ramifications involved in disenrolling from the current use program. And then the last thing before we look at the map here is really making sure that you have the zoning in place to facilitate development at a density that you want in those locations that you want. And so in Calais, one thing that I note as I was looking through the data and working up the map is that a lot of the areas, again, adjacent to the existing villages are low density development, and once again justifying putting those into one of those tier 1 eligible areas is a little bit difficult. And what I mean by the tier 1 eligible areas are just quickly, there are tier 1A and tier 1B areas. Tier 1A is really for municipalities with a downtown center, so we'll just take that off the board for Calais for now. Tier 1B is, you can pursue a tier 1B designation in your village centers and village areas. And what that gets you is if you decide to opt into that program and can demonstrate that you have the capability to carry out the permitting process on your own, then for developments under 10 acres and fewer than 50 units, that's a permit that can be issued at the local level versus going to the Land Use Review Board for a full-on Act 250 proceeding. So I'll stop there, entertain any questions, and then we can jump over to look at the map if folks want.
I got questions. Anybody else have questions?
I really appreciate you the overview. I feel like I have to hear this 4 times or 20 potentially. Anyway, so really appreciate it. Brian, thank you.
Well, I'll be honest,
yeah.
I have multiple copies of the methodology that we're following laid out because I too need to refer to those almost every day.
Yeah, all right.
Don't feel bad if it's taken you 4 or 20 times to get the gist of the idea.
I was really excited to hear you mention the current use program, and one of the, very anecdotally, and this is kind of spaghetti against the wall type talking at this point. I don't careful not to represent anybody else in saying this, but I've often thought that we do a good job, particularly in Calais, I think, of identifying a lot of different resources and mapping them, and we've got fairly robust land use regulations, but and our town plan has gone through a number of iterations and speaks about a lot of those things at length. But one of the kind of principles that has been kind of curious to me and tendrils that I wish we'd have more time to talk about is should we be identifying development corridors? We have these village areas that, to your point, have been developed around water features or other resources that at the time made a lot of sense. We have a lot of conversation about regulation like 181 that are often, I guess, highlighting you want to encourage development around these like more densely populated areas, but they come with a very inherent issue, and that's their proximity to the water resources. So while we're balancing all of these conversations about the give and take about where we want to prioritize and disincentivize development activities, should we also be looking at proactively areas that we do want to incentivize or encourage development activities, or at least the investigation of the potential for development? And for me, that comes at looking at probably large swaths of property that are enrolled in current use and forested, but are maybe adjacent to or along kind of connector roads or other travel patterns that, you know, maybe make sense. Like if we want to prioritize development along this corridor because of how it relates to these two village centers, and are there conversations being had about like, what are the mechanisms that we use to maybe help property owners who would be open to unenrolling in current use and subdividing, and then giving them an option for doing that in a way that they may not be considering, just because the financial implications are so significant that, you know, they can't sustain that. I mean, the incentives for being in the program maybe 20 years ago made sense then, but don't now. But now getting out is such a financial burden that that you can't get out of the program.
So the short answer to all of your questions is yes. I'm not an expert on the current use program, so I'm not able to speak to the financial implications, at least right now, but could certainly talk to folks at the tax department or Forest Parks and Rec about that, if that's of interest. But to your point, you were asking about, should we be identifying these areas where we do want development? One of the things I note, and maybe I just missed it, but I have not found a municipal future land use map for Calais. And I think that's a really good place to start. I think by default, some communities use their zoning map, their zoning district boundaries as their future land use map. I think of those as two different things. Your zoning is really what facilitates you to that future condition. If that's too confusing for folks, I say, if I'm looking at my zoning map, I want my glasses on. If I'm looking at my future land use map, I want to take those glasses off, because the lines aren't, set in stone with a future land use map like it is with a zoning district boundary. So our land use team, we could certainly work with the planning commission or folks that are interested in sort of having a future vision and laying that out. So that's one piece.
Would that be captured in the town plan then? So or like adopted as a component of the town plan? Is that kind of how
so
that
typically the land use chapter in the town plan will talk about the current land use and the future land use.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's that's something that we could help with as well. And that's sort of part one. Part two is that we're working on this regional future land use map, and you'll have time to weigh in, including tonight when I'll show you an early draft of the map. But there will be time for you to comment if the town or the select board in particular is interested in pursuing a tier 1B designation. We can certainly consult with you on that. Sort of, what does that look like? What are the responsibilities of the town, et cetera? So we can do that, and sort of in that iterative process, you'll kind of start fleshing out that idea. I think the difference between what we'll see with this regional map that we'll be putting through the review process shortly and the municipal map is that you would have more time to consider sort of where are those new potential growth areas. And so there's plenty of land that's not in the current use program. And some of these, there are also plenty of parcels where you wouldn't need multiple parcels. You could build a development on a single parcel and really make a new neighborhood type layout. We pursued an effort with the town of Plainfield following the flooding in 23 and 24 to expand their planned growth areas into essentially two relatively undeveloped areas that are outside of harm's way. So while it is encouraged for us to continue to pursue this compact development pattern, realistically, that's not always possible. And so instead of looking for corridors, as you asked about, we're not really looking for strip development necessarily. Otherwise, some folks would refer to that as sprawl. We're looking for areas where we could put in new compact development where funding for infrastructure would be possible. And I stepped away to get some water, so I don't know if Christian mentioned the CHIP program, but that's another possibility for funding some infrastructure for some big idea type projects. So anyway, I'll stop there and get to the map unless I didn't answer any of your questions there, or if other folks have questions.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. I appreciate it, Brian.
I'll interlude while he's getting it up. Brian began to touch on the fact that it's sort of this iteration where the town is leading, region gets that feedback, puts in, and it is an ongoing conversation back and forth with each update we make, with each update to your plan that you make. There's that opportunity to reflect that back.
Okay, so here we are in North Calais, and let's see, I'm just trying to think of the easiest. I can't really display a legend and the graphics at the same time. I'm just going to zoom in here. Oops, real quick. Okay, so I'm just going to flash this on the screen and off real quick. So what you're seeing there is the in this green dotted area, that's the existing state designated village center, and that black and white hatch, excuse me, hatch pattern is a state designated historic district. So when I'm working on this map, I'm starting with existing designations, and it's important to note that any of the land that is currently designated as a village center under the state designation program automatically becomes a village center land use class under the regional future land use mapping effort as enacted via Act 181. So if you've got an existing village center, you keep that full designation for that area. And I can then look at the village center and the area that surrounds it, and I'm looking at a number of different characteristics related to the parcel, probably about 20 or 30 different characteristics, but also reviewing the municipal plan, looking at the specifications that you set out in the zoning bylaws, and really trying to draw boundaries around parcels that make sense to include in the that make sense and have been planned for inclusion in higher density development into the future. So this dark green color that you see is the rural conservation, and it's a little bit oddly shaped. It's made up of some water, but also some flood hazard areas that I'll just flash on here on and off real quick. Now, when I'm expanding the village center class, I'm looking for parcels that are directly adjacent, that are generally walkable, that have some, either good soils for disposal or access to water, and are outside of flood hazard areas and don't include wetlands of more than 5 acres. So pretty long checklist. And so what we see is that, the legacy village center area is still included, and then I exclude the flood hazard areas from any of those higher density classes. Now, the lighter pink is the village area, and there's really only a fairly minor difference between a village center and a village area. But the short version is that the village area surrounds a village center and again has multimodal access to the village center itself, meaning that it's possible to get there by some other means than driving. And so when I mentioned the tier 1 eligibility, the parcels that we see in red and in pink are part of those core 4 areas, the downtown center, planned growth area, village center, and village area, that are eligible to pursue a tier 1 designation. So let me bring this back to the earlier conversation about, what kind of things can the town of Calais do to incentivize housing? Well, part of this is to provide feedback. And again, this is just a draft, so nothing set in stone here, but providing feedback on the map once it comes out, but then working with your planning commission, working with CVRPC to make sure that the zoning that's in place for these areas can accommodate the level of development density that you're envisioning for the town. Is it just to meet that 4 to 5 units per acre that was created under the Home Act, or are you looking for something a bit denser in these small pockets of town that might require some additional planning? The yellowish tannish color here is our rural residential class. So again, not really a location that's currently envisioned for higher density development, but through planning for infrastructure, it could be sidewalks, it could be sewer, it could be water, planning for future infrastructure to facilitate new development. Maybe at some point you come back to us and say, that was rural residential in your 2026 map, but we've made a lot of progress towards identifying a pathway to densifying development along the road here, and maybe even extending a little bit further out to the east. And we'd like to talk to you about redesignating that so that it could potentially be adopted into the existing tier 1B, again, if you choose to go that route. And then the last one I'll show here, this greenish, off greenish color is our rural ag and residential. So this is largely lands that are enrolled in the current use program, but they could also be large parcels, at least 20 acres in size, that are for the most part forested and could be managed as a working forest. Whether or not they actually are is not really relevant to the designation. It's that they could be managed for forest if the landowner so chose. And I'll remind folks, but you probably already know, just because you're not enrolled in current use doesn't mean that people aren't managing their land for forestry and agricultural purposes already. One last thing I'll say, and then I'll open it up to the floor for questions. Again, just as it relates to the rural conservation, this dark green, I've touched on a couple of these, but I'll just sort of run down the priority list again. These are going to be lands that are parcels that are already conserved through something like the Vermont Land Trust or the Vermont River Conservancy or some other easement holding organization. They could also be state park and forest land. It could be municipal, it could be the town forest, for example. So just because a parcel is included in that conservation And that conservation class doesn't exclude it from development and doesn't mean that there aren't already existing activities, in all likelihood, forestry already going on in these places. So we're looking for lands that have high ecological values. So thinking about our larger wetlands, our floodplains, lands above 2,500 feet in elevation, locations where there are rare, threatened, and endangered species, and the list goes on for a little bit there. But really, the key takeaway is this rural conservation class does not preclude development at any point in the future. And I think I stressed that point the last time. I think it's important to stress every time until folks really catch on to the fact that we're not saying this is somewhere where you can't develop. And really importantly, this map doesn't carry that regulatory authority anyways. So I'll stop there and see if there's any other questions.
Seeing none, I'm gonna jump in. Okay, fine, just one.
I have just one.
Thanks, yeah, please, thank you.
Brian, when you and your team are making these maps, and this is an early draft, how much does land topography play in when you're creating these maps? Just looking at this North Calais map, for instance, in the tannish area off to the right there, your cursor, like topography wise, that would be extremely difficult to develop because it's a lot of ledge and it's very steep topography. So just out of curiosity, how much does topography play when you guys create these maps?
So I do take a look at that. That's not a formal part of the methodology that we follow, but it's unlikely you can make out the text on the right, but you're absolutely correct about that. That parcel, 72% of that is greater than 15% slope, 60% is greater than 20% slope. I can't really remember the cutoff for development, if you have one specified in your bylaws, but so I look at it, but it's not a real determining factor. I think the reason I actually even calculated those statistics is for these conversations with the towns, because to me, at that point, it kind of doesn't matter if this parcel is rural general or rural ag and forestry, and if the town would prefer it reflected as even less likely for future high density development, I would be more than happy to shift that into the rural ag and forestry. If it's well, and again, without looking at the digital elevation model, I can't say, but if it's the back 40, that's the steep part, and this front little area here could take 3, 4, 5 units, then I'd probably prefer just to leave it in the rural general class. Ideally, we're not breaking parcels up. We're including them in an entire parcel in a single class. But again, that's not a hard and fast rule. So if folks feel really strongly about it and want me to look at the data in that location or want to look at the data with me in that location, let's do that. And I'm happy to make those kinds of changes. There will be times where somebody's idea of what a parcel should be compared to the way I have it classified might run sort of contrary to the existing methodology. So again, just a quick step back to however many months ago I was out there. The legislature tasked the Vermont Association of Planning and Development Agencies, so that essentially the regional planning commissions, with developing a standardized methodology that all of the regional planning commissions would use when they develop their regional future land use map. It's not, again, not something set in stone. If we want to vary from the methodology, we can do so, but it's more on a case-by-case basis. And then when we go to the Land Use Review Board for our review of this review and approval of the regional future land use map, we would provide them with details about why we strayed from the methodology and then provide a justification for doing so. I make it sound, almost impossible. I'm not sure that it is. I think they're willing to have that conversation, just like I'm willing to have the conversation with the town. But there will be times where the methodology, where I might not be able to justify a change from the methodology based on the conditions that we see on the ground.
So I think that kind of it is a section of kind of the line of thought that I'm having. I think that there's some fairly polite folks sitting in the room here who are looking at North Calais and realizing that the topography and proximity to water are a significant limitation on considering any like reasonable development activity happening in that area. And one of the things that kind of like strikes me about this is you have these layers of input information, like the defined village areas and historic districts that have maybe been designated with a lot of input regionally for various incentives, but then when used to inform this kind of thing as a base layer in the methodology, there's a departure and a certain like inefficiency in just like adopting, you know, those designations now. I mean, it wouldn't seem far-fetched for me to start theoretically entertaining a conversation of like, maybe we'd want North Calais to maintain its historic designation or historic district designation because it's got a character and aesthetic and settlement pattern that warrants attention, but maybe it doesn't need to have that village designation anymore, or it has like some other kind of maybe it's just pulled out of this altogether. But that kind of gets to my primary question is, you know, what I think there's a lot of you know, internal endemic knowledge that lives in, you know, within the community that can really inform even the rough designations and making this kind of drafting process as efficient as possible for region, you know, and what's the best way for us to engage in that process in a democratic way, because I think, as we all know, like once these things kind of get you know, exit velocity, it's hard to slow down the inertia of them rolling forward and getting very iterative. And I think there'd be a lot of insight to say like why we maybe don't want to include this one particular area or have it highlighted in this way in particular. So is there, what's the most efficient way for us to get you that information or that kind of feedback?
Yeah, so we're getting close to wrapping up this first draft, and at that point, I'm going to have a publicly accessible interactive map that folks can provide comment on, and then we're also going to, you know, come back out to the communities. I know it doesn't. You're asking like what can we do proactively, and this isn't really. Unfortunately, the process hasn't really been set up that way. Again, I'm following this methodology based on where the data takes me, and then I'll have that conversation with the town and make you know, the changes as we see fit. So apologies if that's not really what you wanted to hear. I also want to touch on the first point that you made. The legislation does not allow us to turn an existing village center into something that's other than a village center, but I don't have to include the historic designated area, for one. And the other thing is, if you were interested in pursuing a Tier 1B designation, that's not for the whole town. That's for specific areas in town. So maybe Maple Corners is somewhere you want to see a lot more development. So you pursue a Tier 1B designation for the village center and village area parcels over there. But North Calais, you want it to maintain that sort of historic character that it already has. So you don't pursue Tier 1B there. And if someone were to come in with a large scale development, that would then trigger an Act 250 proceeding. So again, I'm not sure if I made my point clear enough there in terms of the distinction about how to proceed, but you yeah, I'll stop there and let you respond.
I want to jump in real quick as well. You said, when is that preemptive point to put the community's vision on the table? And that's the municipal plan. That's the future land use map. That's your zoning map. That's where we start. So in many ways, this map is already reflecting years of work and input from the Calais community and all our communities before Brian even starts putting lines on paper. Now, through those processes, you realize there's a new area of town you want to develop, and that works its way up into your municipal plan and into your future land use map. We're going to take that into consideration, and now we're going to say, all right, well, they're planning densification at point X in the town. How should we classify that to reflect their planning goals?
Thank you. I think that makes sense. And again, you know, for me, I know I know that everyone who's involved and this is kind of bound by the legislation and the kind of methodology that's been defined. I get concerned about the various motives that inform those initial pieces of information and demographic information. There are a bunch of incremental decisions that were made a long time ago and are now just being kind of added to or iterated on in a way that it becomes kind of a disconnect. And because I think it'd be hard pressed to rationalize a pursuit of tier 1B designation for any of the villages, village centers, for one reason or another. And it would be a really complicated conversation. It would also be, I think, an exciting conversation to look at other areas that aren't bound by those same pre-existing designations, to kind of pursue or incentivize those development activities. That's the only reason the corridor is the only word that I can think of to apply to that kind of concept. But the other thing that worries me a little bit as these things get kind of codified and solidified and then adopted into and represented into town plans is how the town plan then gets used as either fodder or leverage in kind of signaling the values or aspirations of a community, and kind of runs in tandem with the zoning regulations. And once there's a map with delineations, you know, I know those of us who are maybe more used to reviewing these maps and the intents of them can kind of take off one pair of glasses and put on another one. But when they get interpreted adjacent to land use regulations, they can then become points of conflict on why we say no in one place, and mostly just why we say no in one place, just because it doesn't exist in another. I don't know, maybe I'm being too opaque about what my concern there is. I'll leave it at that.
I mean, I think it's a point in time, right? Like that's like part of the process is engaging with using the base of knowledge that's been created, right? And the tools that have been created. And then there has to be a moment where you're saying, okay, well, this is, you know, we're going to get a bunch of feedback and use that. And Brian, I'm hearing, and Christian, that like the feedback is not just from the governance structure it's support, it's from the community. Do I understand that there's an opportunity for the community to weigh in and ask questions and be made familiar with the opportunity? So, okay. But yeah, I mean, I hear you in terms of that, but I don't think we have a future land use map.
No,
And
we
I just
obviously
was
don't.
looking if I didn't see one quickly, scanning it for the previous town plan either, so maybe we don't. Maybe, anyway, that's an interesting conversation about sort of why don't we? And is that normal or not normal? Is that the norm?
It's required, but a
Yeah.
lot of towns just use their zoning.
Just
Yeah,
use their
say,
zoning
this is our
for
future
it, okay, thank
That's what
you.
you can build in the future.
Okay,
Interesting.
thank you.
But it's, you know, that's different. That's a regulatory map versus a visionary map.
Right.
So.
Well, very appreciative of the time that everyone has spent on this and willingness to kind of share. I just want to kind of wrap up a little bit and just ask, what kind of timeline we should expect to continue to engage in providing feedback in this, or help facilitate community input. Are there? Maybe it's too soon for that, but if we've got a ballpark, we certainly want to know.
Well, our map should be outward facing in the next few weeks. It'll be out for public comment basically all summer. Early summer, we'll be sending it to the Land Use Review Board for their comments. Middle of June, basically. Then, yeah, we'll await their comment. They'll give us a bunch of things to say we have to change, or they'd like us to change, and we'll decide which ones we want to adopt. Just like if we get a lot of comments about one thing or the other from the general public, we'll take that all into consideration. Our board of commissioners will. And then from a municipality's point of view, you want to be thinking certainly toward over the course of the summer, are there areas that are eligible for Tier 1B that you would like to opt into? And we can walk you through that form and that self-certification process. And remember, if it's not in Tier 1, if it's in Tier 2 or nothing at all, it's still status quo, nothing lost. All right, it's not a reduction of rights on any of these places. It's just new incentives.
Okay.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Christian and Brian. Appreciate it.
Oh, can I just say one other thing real quick? Sorry. Once the draft map is ready, I'll also be producing municipal summaries, so you'll see how much land is under each of the land use classes. And we can print out a large format map that you can hang in the town office for folks to come in and review if they're not comfortable with an online experience. So we're trying to certainly make sure that it's available in formats that reach the broadest possible audience. For those of you that are interested in the online approach, you'll just be able to click in the map and add a comment in a pop-up window and submit those comments, and then I'll be able to collect those all in a database and address those and or at least respond to the comments as we receive them. So that's all for now.
Terrific.
Yeah, we'll also have housing targets due next time we talk to you, but there's no stick attached to that. It's all just sort of tracking.
Yes.
Yeah, we have to disaggregate targets to each municipality, but municipalities have to plan for housing.
Right.
But if you don't meet these lofty targets that the state's given us, there's no stick. So that's kind of just, there's not forcing towns to build anything. So it's just a little less controversial, I anticipate.
Okay.
But we'll talk to you more about that. So
That sounds great.
Great. Thanks, Christian.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Hard pivot to local emergency management. Sort of hard pivot. Welcome, James.
How are you guys?
Doing well, how are you?
I'm pretty good.
Yeah. So I guess this is kind of a hybrid spring check-in, which is kind of the seasonality we're trying to stick to with our regular agenda planning, but we also have the approval of the LEMP documentation, which is an annual adoption. Maybe we'll just start with that one, if that makes sense. So there were a few documents that were provided and posted to the share drive. The municipal adoption forms are the ones that we'll be looking at again. This is basically a checklist of the various folks to be activated and an acknowledgement of the resources in place within the community that's largely prepared by our emergency management director and coordinator. was there any other characterization or that you wanted to add to that?
Not too much. I mean, it's more or less the same plan as last year. There wasn't a ton of updates for us. Whether we're talking about the LEMP or the adoption form itself, there wasn't much change. As far as the adoption form goes, I think I copied last year's form verbatim because nothing's changed in that aspect. I think a handful of the stuff that we changed in the LEMP itself was contact information. Is about all that really changed. So it's more or less the same document that you guys looked at last year and was approved by both Vermont Emergency Management and FEMA without issue. So we do not foresee any issues again this year.
Consideration, I guess, would be, we just need either a board member to be authorized to sign it, or I guess we could, well, it says town manager. Kari signs enough stuff, so it'd probably be an authorization of me to sign the LEMP. Before we entertain that, one of my lingering questions were obviously going to be considering replacing you as the emergency management director. I would assume as soon as we find a new one and appoint them, we should plan on updating this and resubmitting it.
So we don't have to resubmit it. It's a living document.
Okay.
So it essentially goes back to what we were saying before.
Yeah.
Barbara was saying, it's a point in time kind of document.
Sure.
So we're submitting it this way, but it's a living document. We have full right to resubmit it to Vermont Emergency Management whenever we wanted to.
Sure.
We don't pay anything for submission, so if we wanted to, we totally could. And it's a fairly easy process to do with our VEM rep, Sid Bullock. So we can totally do that if we decide to.
Okay.
But we do not have to.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
It's a question about the NIMS, the National Incident Management System.
The
It
new.
refers to meeting the requirements and it refers to an adoption date. Does that mean the select board's attesting to we meet the requirements?
So the adoption. So we do meet the requirements. It's as part of it's in the LEMP. There's a chart in there. And the adoption date will be the same adoption date for the LEMP itself.
I see.
Yeah. So that's why I left that section blank, because we haven't adopted it yet.
With that, I guess I'd entertain a motion to authorize me to sign the LEMP.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Kari, do you have a
I do.
printed version of that? Great. And then with that, I guess it would just be kind of a spring check-in on what's the goings on with the emergency management committee.
Yeah. So our big focus over the past couple of months has been the LEMP, getting it done. It has a June 1st deadline, so as you guys approval, PEM has a whole month to go through it, so there shouldn't be an issue there. And then the LHMP, the Local Hazard Mitigation Plan, we've been working on. That's due every 5 years. Ours is due in October. We've been working with the Regional Planning Commission. There's been a lot of emails between Kari, myself, and Keith from the Planning Commission, Regional Planning Commission. We've had 2 meetings with them so far, just to kind of kickstart things, like this is what we're looking at and where we want to go. And then at our last meeting, we identified what we believe to be the largest potential hazards to the town. And that will kind of direct how the LHMP itself is focused, and where the Regional Planning Commission will kind of focus their efforts for different mitigation processes. So we have a lot of work ahead of us on this hazard mitigation plan for the town. Then Jake has been doing a lot with radios and communications with town, to make sure we're connected, not just internally, but also he's done a great job in expanding us. We've got people who join us from Woodbury, and I'm not sure if anybody's joined us from East Montpelier yet, but I know there's been a lot of talk about people from interest from East Montpelier as well. So Jake's been doing a great job with that particular aspect of communications. Now that the Lent has been taken care of and we have a little more free time, we're gonna start working more on emergency preparedness plans for, okay, this happens, here's a piece of paper that says, okay, you're gonna call this person, you're gonna activate this shelter, this is, at this particular location, we have 4 cases of bottled water, 6 cots, and, I don't know, 2 cases of canned food, whatever it might be, XYZ like that. In those plans, it would also talk about different equipment that's available, who you would contact to get a hold of equipment if it's at a different site, it needs to be moved. Once we have those, we'll do a tabletop exercise and kind of work out the kinks of those plans and throw an example out on the floor and be like, okay, we have a large snowstorm reminiscent of Valentine's Day storm and power's out for the vast majority of the town. What are we doing? And kind of just spitball from there. Those are our current big ambitions for the year, to make us more prepared, actually prepared for when something does happen. Now, saying whoever the new director is when they come in wants to change that plan, they're more than welcome to. But that's kind of the direction we're heading to, is just try to have the actual preparedness plans more set in stone, and that way, maybe for whatever reason, everybody who's on the committee isn't available to open a shelter. There'll be hard copies of plans at each location. They'll be on the town website. So there'll be, somebody would have essentially a set of instructions on what to do at each location, provided it was needed, to make more people prepared to the best of our ability. That's kind of the direction we're heading.
Well, I think that sounds excellent.
I know, once again, we have to say thank you for your leadership.
Don't forget July 10th.
Oh,
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. And I would rather not think about it, but.
All right. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like an ambitious scope of work. You know, I know you and I are been trying to kind of connect, and last week got away from me before we had a chance to kind of have a more candid conversation about things. That still very much intend to have that, and we'll table it, get into the weeds too much of it. But one of the things that kind of keeps coming up in my mind, and Kari and I have had a conversation about it a few times, is as nuanced and hyper-specific as a lot of these plans are relative to the communities that they're serving. It does seem like there's a certain amount of regional overlap in the exercise, and it makes me curious about, you know, feedback from the committee and yourself about, and committee members about, like, where there might be an opportunity to consolidate these resources across a few different communities. Just so that there's more continuity from one town to the next. I mean, I think it's awesome that we're working on the communication element, but if another community doesn't have this level of organization, it's almost as much of a liability to us as it is to them.
Yeah, not very much so. No, so we've talked about that on the committee level as well, how all local towns around us are facing the same problems, the same concerns, they're working on the same projects to varying degrees. From the people that I've talked to, from East Montpelier, Plainfield, Woodbury, and I know some people in Hardwick, we seem to be drastically ahead of most other towns. So unfortunately, we're kind of in the lead for this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of interest for collaboration. So,
Yeah, for a fee.
hey, I can't decide that part, but my ultimate goal would be to create one such emergency preparedness plan, and then once we have it ironed out on our local level, we invite other town EMDs, select board members, committees, whatever it is, be like, this is what we're doing, and we want to know how we can work with you, and we can all work together to strengthen not only our plan, but whatever plans you guys do have in place, or help you put something in place, so we're all working more or less on the same page. Because we're all trying to do the same thing for the same people, but there's a lot of people who are working against each other for one reason or another, and different ideals clash. But I think we're kind of being so far ahead of everybody else, we kind of have to lead this and finish it up, and then bring everybody else in and see, okay, this is where we're at, what's your input? Or how can we improve this by utilizing your resources, or how can we improve yours by utilizing our resources, or X, Y, Z.
Well, I thank you for being proactive about that. I mean, it's, I hope, I know it's certainly appreciated at this level, but, you know, I hope the broader community appreciates it, because, you know, in times of crisis or need, you know, like flooding or any of these types of events, like these are the types of resources and thoughts that, you know, we all benefit from. And part of the reason we can organize quickly and, you know, get FEMA applications organized, it's what helps preserve that muscle memory, and keeps us ahead of other communities that have to be more reactionary in those types of measures. So
Yeah,
thank you for the work. But yeah, we'll leave it at that unless anybody else has any other questions. And thanks again. And thanks, Jake, as well. Okay. He was just making sure that he didn't go into emergency management coordinator. Thanks, James, and again, my apologies for last week getting away from me, but your schedule is much like mine, it sounds like, and it's fluid, so it's almost as much of a liability as a benefit too, so.
very much so.
I'll try to connect with you maybe later this week if it works.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you. With that, we're running a little behind schedule, but we do have a public comment period.
Can we check in?
Sorry.
I'm just seeing. Tom, are you here for an item on the agenda?
I'm here for the new members of the Trails Committee.
Okay, great.
Christine and Jason, they just showed up.
Okay. Oh, I see it. It's under administrative. I didn't see it on the agenda, so I was just concerned that. Thank you.
So we have a public comment period for members of the public who are in attendance, want to raise an issue or register comment on anything that's not currently on the agenda. And I'm not seeing anyone on Zoom. Doug, were you anticipating using the public comment period, or was there something?
Oh, I use the public, yeah.
Okay, was there an issue you wanted to speak to?
I want to talk about several things that people asking me about. I don't know why they all come, here in the forum. But they're concerned about family on a Selectboard, like you two. They're concerned about it.
Okay.
Two people on the same board, within the same family, doesn't seem quite right to them. That is a problem, I think. And they recommend, people I've been talking to, they recommend 3 people instead of 5 on the board. And it'd be, That would be, maybe we get more people. It's hard to get people, I understand, it's hard to get on this board. They don't want it, nobody wants this board, nobody wants it. And they have a lot of problems with the town town clerk's office about what's going on Friday, they asked me. I don't know what's going on Friday. Do you know anything that's going on Friday? Why? Listen, why do you call down there and you get Barbara? And Barbara will tell you this on the phone. It's they won't take calls, they won't talk to anybody today because they have to have meetings or something like that. But there's nobody there. So that Friday, they stay home. They do. I checked on it, I know they do. I've been down, I call down here and I get that same message. I come down here, there's no cars here. Not here, not over there. Where the hell are they? We pay them, don't we? Do we pay them? Yeah, we pay them.
Yeah.
Okay, so why I think you can't, several things I wanted to get, like my court case, I got a court case going on, he knows that, and I come in there one day and I want to go through my bookwork. And I don't want to take it out of the office, I don't want, and he's getting ready to go to pick his car up. Well, I think it's on town time, but that's all right. He didn't have time to look through my folder. He looked through the folder. Wait a minute, don't interrupt me.
No, I want to make sure that I'm understanding. You're expressing an issue with having access to the town office when there are normal office hours that are posted?
Yeah, well, they post Fridays for just, how do you say that, do you know?
Where do we have it posted? Everywhere I've written it down, it's Monday through Thursday that we're open.
And Fridays, what? What do they say Fridays?
Fridays we're closed.
Monday through
It doesn't
Thursday.
say Fridays.
9 to 4.
It says on the answer machine that didn't say the
By
close.
appointment only.
That's right.
You've never made an appointment to be there.
I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about other people.
And if someone has made an appointment to work
And they
Friday.
don't make an appointment, and they don't make an appointment, so they're not there. So if you have an appointment, you call to make an appointment.
Sure.
They can't make an appointment, don't, listen, that's true.
And
they're not there.
The semantics of it here.
Huh? So we're paying the town clerk's office to work, what, 4 days a week, 2 days a week, 3 days? Somebody's getting us right there. No, you're wrong, I'm right, you're wrong, if you don't believe me.
Okay, were there any other issues that you wanted to raise?
Yeah, I talked to the Army Corps of Engineers today for about 2 hours. He gives me permission to open that brook up through there and the beaver dams from Lightning Ridge Road up through Janet, Ann Winchester's daughter owns it now, she just bought it. Do you know where I mean? On Tucker Road?
No.
On Tucker Road.
Okay.
And she got a beaver pond there that they had no permit to put it there. Army Corps of Engineers know that. Last year I shot 9 beaver out of there, killed 9 beavers. This year they're right back there again. They're flooding that field. They flooded, I'd say 5 acres. We can't use it.
So this sounds like a private property owner issue. If it's not town property, I don't see how that's...
No, it's not town property, but the town, well, you got involved in this up here, didn't you?
Yeah, because there was work that needed to be done within the town right away relative to the road. So we can't comment on, and it's not really...
No, that's why I went to Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay,
I'm just telling you what we're doing, so you don't jump on me. So now, somebody changed that corner from going from Lightning Ridge Road over to Tucker Road. They made it wider so you could swing in there. Now, I used to plant flowers there. Years and years for flowers, nice flowers, had a little flower bed.
Doug, you've raised
Wait a minute, you don't want to hear any of this, do you?
I
No, I mean, you've raised this issue before, and
No, you didn't, you haven't solved the problem, have you?
I'm failing to see what the problem is.
Because they widened the roads, they took my land away from me, they took a tree last week or sometime, I don't know when they did it, they took it. They cut it down, they didn't cut it down, they tipped it over, took the whole damn thing.
Okay.
Okay? And that's, and Alfie is very vindictive. And when when he was on the town manager, and now we got Jordan here, I guess, no, not Jordan, yeah, no. What is his name?
I don't know.
Safford. He widens the road, and he went out through the, wait a minute, I spent an hour here listening to your nonsense about town plan.
No, this is, we're conducting a meeting and conducting town business here, so.
So I got town.
At this point, I'm gonna move on here, Doug. This is.
In other words, shut up and move out, right?
So we're gonna move on to the next.
Okay, I saw you go by my house the other night. Was it you or your twin?
I don't know, Doug. I don't have a twin, so, and I wasn't going by your house, recently at all, actually, so. So that's not pertinent or relevant. We're gonna move on to, the department leave issue.
Well, we're not straightened out about this town.
The Trails Committee.
If everybody's here, we're behind schedule, I think.
So I'm gonna leave, sorry.
So we have administrative items to consider, which would be the appointment of Christine and Jason to the Trails Committee. And these are for open vacancies, I believe, is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
What happened at the last select board meeting where we had to address the new member.
Yeah.
I think it was last fall, I can't remember. But we had to, there were more people who wanted to be on the committee than we had slots for.
Sure.
So the select board decided, as I recall, to expand the number of members to no more than 15. Correct me if I'm wrong, but, and at the time we had, with the new members coming in, that made it 11, I believe. So with Jason and Christina, we make 13, we'd still be under the.
Well, yeah, that sounds great. And I don't want to miss the opportunity for Jason and Christine to speak to their interest in serving in this particular capacity, if you'd like to take the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for giving us a few minutes of your time tonight, and also just for taking us on the schedule so last minute. We appreciate it. For myself personally, I've been living now in East Calais for 2 years, and I'm really passionate about the landscape here. It's one of the things that drew us in. And now that we're living here, the amazing people is another reason that we're so happy to be here. So we're just excited to continue to get out on the land, help keep the trails maintained, and communicate well with the committee so that we stay on top of it. And, you know, it's a resource that everybody around can enjoy. I personally have done this in different capacities in my life. And so I'm just thrilled to start. Anything you want to add?
Hello, my name is Jason. Yeah, I just echo Christine's sentiment with the trails. When we lived in New Hampshire, I was part of the Sunapee Greenway Trail Committee. And my wife and I are both avid hikers. And it's just kind of part of our routine when we hike anywhere to maintain the trail the best we can along the way. I myself always carry along a bag to pick up any trash or, litter that we find. And this is a good, kind of a natural way for us to help out in the community and also get more involved. So we're looking forward to it.
Well, thank you. I couldn't agree more. And certainly Tom's characterization of the intent of increasing the capacity of the Trails Committee is largely in recognition of its need to operate with volunteers who care about the trails and maintaining the trails. So while it's not urgent for those to be filled or dire
appreciated, and we appreciate the interest to serve the community in that capacity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, do any other select board members have any other questions? I'd be happy to entertain a joint motion to appoint Christine and Jason to the Trails Committee. And I believe that's for is it a 1-year term?
I'm not sure, I'll have to look.
Oh, where's Barbara?
Without Barbara, I'm lost.
There's a variety, well, it looks like there could be, no, it's 3-year terms. At least that's according to the,
They're all.
These would both be two, well, they'd be new
or
positions.
they're new, so they would
They're
start.
not filling a position that's already there,
Right.
so we would start from scratch from this
So
is
Start with the 3-year.
3-year terms. Oh, you ready?
You ready
Is that
for a
okay?
3-year?
I'm not going anywhere.
We're
Yeah.
good with that.
For the rest.
Starting.
automatically renewed.
Yeah.
Unless you, we gotta click something.
And it's hard to find the click.
So that would be an appointment of both for 3-year terms.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thanks, Tom.
thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome
Thank
to
you
the
for
Trails
coming,
Committee.
Tom.
See you on the trails.
Yes.
I'm curious, does the committee have any plans for this season?
Not really. We had our big expansion last year with the Long Meadow Hill Trail and then the Carbrook Trail. Not that I'm aware of.
Maintenance
Just
here?
maintaining all the trails we have.
Yeah.
That would keep us busy.
Absolutely.
So, but thank you for your support.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks,
There are a
Tom.
couple
Have a
trees
good
down
night.
on the trails that your dad's fixed. So.
Are you being serious?
Yeah, I was there
Where?
a couple weeks ago. I was up on the upper.
We fixed those.
Thank you.
Yeah, if anybody sees any trees down anywhere, let me know.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, Tom. Have a good night. So we'll circle back to the Highway Department vacation leave conversation, which is going to kind of naturally roll into some other policy adjustment that Kari's recommendation. So let's dive back into the vacation leave.
Yep, so this is a contract issue that came up recently. Just to remind you, vacation leave is awarded currently once per year. It's with the calendar year. We've done it on the January 1st. The next contract that starts in July will be doing two equal portions in January and July. But anyway, with our new contract, it's only in year 3. This is the first time we've had an employee reach the 5-year anniversary, which is a good thing.
It's a good.
And but they reached it and are eligible for another week of vacation leave going forward. But they reached it after January 1st, so that there wasn't part of that award. So we didn't know how to handle it. So after discussing it with different folks, including the union representative, we're proposing a side letter agreement that would just prorate that extra week based on the anniversary date where it fell in the calendar year. Seems like a logical solution. It just needed a little time to discuss. And then that would go into effect right away, be actually effective January 1st. So the employee in question would get their prorated portion, and then everybody going forward, part of the next contract. And there's also a second piece in that agreement about, we've already done the full allotment in 2025, but the new contract allocates a little bit more leave in most of the classes, the seniority classes. We didn't really think about what to do with that for 2025, so this would just codify that we're going to give everybody half of that additional increment on July 1st.
Okay.
Which is totally fair.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm lost, but that's all right.
that I appreciate the effort into trying to find a solution. And there's not many ways to dice this up, I think, and that balances both the efficiency and of managing the accrual, and then also the the equitability of the disbursement of said accruals and et cetera, et cetera.
It
this
is a
seems like
function of having these annual, or now it's gonna be semi-annual awards of
yeah.
in every place I've worked, you accrue it as you go.
Right.
And that's not how we're set up, and there's not much interest, I would say, for the union in changing, because this is pretty beneficial.
Yeah.
But they did, accept splitting it into two halves. That is a little better, I think, than just the once per year.
And I think that certainly represents kind of the seasonality of the work as well, to a certain extent. So that was my only lingering question, was just kind of a temperature. It sounds like the union members are comfortable with this resolution, and so I feel like this kind of addresses their
I believe so.
their concern to have something more definitive on the books. Does anybody else have any other questions or concerns?
I just was gonna ask what Kari just delineated, so that's helpful. It's just sort of the head scratching why we do it this way, but
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
So this will live as
labor contracts, once you
Right.
give a benefit like that, it's
100%.
pretty hard to
Right.
change it.
Well, it's a good problem to have when you have folks sticking around.
Yeah.
No, it is a positive overall.
So that would be a motion to accept and sign the side letter agreement as prepared so that'll live as basically an addendum to our current collective bargaining agreement. Can I get a motion to do so?
So moved.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Policy review. So there's a couple of policy adjustments that Kari's kind of put forward that were shared in the share drive. One of the most common sense ones, I guess, was that to also kind of reconcile this issue and bring some continuity between our collective bargaining and our personnel policy. Kari, I'll let you.
That what I say is the bulk of it. It's been on my list for a while now to include the domestic partner eligibility, because the select board adopted that, I want to say, in mid-2024, after this version of the personnel policies have been adopted. And then there's just some language in the policies about working on holidays that was confusing. So just taking an opportunity to clean this up. So it's kind of feels like housekeeping, although the additional vacation leave to align with the contract is really a policy decision that you're considering here.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions or comments on those recommended changes? I'll just say that I think there's a lot of value in maintaining continuity between the two. We've run into situations where there weren't.
The two documents,
and that is always a headache. So I think relative to our previous action, it warrants making that adjustment and adopting that for this as well. And what would be the most appropriate way? I think we could probably, if they're all changes to the personnel policy, so we could just accept them as a slate of changes.
Yes.
Okay.
That's fine.
Can I get a motion to accept the changes to the personnel policy as prepared and presented?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Gee, are you abstaining? Okay, I was just quiet. Okay. That's amazing. Great. So that is the policy items. My battery is dying. Moving on to the balance of the administrative items and action items. So pick up with the review and the accepting of the April 13th Select Board meeting minutes. Those were posted to the share drive as prepared by Meadow again in expert fashion. Thank you so much, Meadow. Does anybody have any comments or?
I had one thing, under Select Board letter on behalf of the Calais voters. Just that first sentence there, Jamie drafted 2 letters expressing the Select Board's position on the proposed pre-K consolidation, and I just felt like it was not, I mean, maybe those were the words that got spoken. But it doesn't reflect the point that it's the Calais voters' position is what that we were carrying forward, as opposed to the board's.
And I agree with you, it should say that.
Calais voters.
Yes.
There. So I don't know, Meadow, if you're hearing me.
I am hearing you, and I'm making changes in the minutes as you speak them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So it'll be a little bit redundant, the way that whole sentence works, but I'm sure you will make it work. Thank you. I didn't see anything else. That was just one that popped out of me.
Other questions, concerns, or comments? Assuming everybody is comfortable with those, that amendment, can I get a motion to accept the minutes for April 13th as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, thank you very much, and thank you, Meadow. Vote to approve board orders, also posted to the share drive for review. Hopefully everybody's had the opportunity to review those. Kari provided a brief summary and some of those as well in the memo. Do you want to discuss the journal entry conversation now, or you want to save that for an admin report maybe?
Let's do it after the orders.
Sure. Yep. Are there any questions about the board orders? Can I get a motion to accept and sign the board orders as posted to the shared drive?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Delinquent tax warrant.
So that item, I was under the gun and included that because I knew there was a delinquent tax warrant coming, but it turns out the select board doesn't need to sign that. It'll be signed by the treasurer and the delinquent tax collector. Okay. And it's just confirming that we're moving forward towards tax sale with one property. And there's still time. The owners can reach out to Sandra and establish a payment plan. They can show up at the sale and make an offer, a bid. So, and then they'll have a year redemption period too if it does sell.
Right. Even if it does sell, right?
But so far we've had no contact with that party, so we have to move forward.
Okay. Thank you.
So no action there. The general journal entries, I've referred to this before, but in the select board's long list of recommendations for internal controls, they have a section on someone in a position of authority, not just reviewing these, but approving them. So I thought the cleanest way to do would bring you a report like this monthly. This is fairly short, but not uncommon that we have this view, but sometimes there'll be a second page or something like that. And just have one or more select board members sign it and would just document that. I think that satisfies the auditor's recommendation. And if you have questions about these, please let me know, but they're basically accounting actions that are not going through the other modules like payroll or accounts payable or cash receipts. They're things that I'm doing on my own. Common examples would be bank interest, or if the state makes a payment to us, it's going directly into our bank account, so it's not going through cash receipts or other ways. So I think that's the auditor's concern, is that this is an area where you can't get in trouble because one person is doing it basically on their own.
I understand.
And it's also the do to, do from
Right.
movements, correct? Or no?
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
right.
those are captured in
That's what
there.
I'm understanding, yeah, okay.
I think this makes sense. I also think that it could just be one of the items included in the board orders packet as like something to be signed, whether it's
Okay.
represented
Absolutely.
in the agenda as a standalone thing to be signed and approved. But I just kind of want to get the temperature on the rest of the group on whether or not they think that's appropriate. I mean, the scope of work is very relevant to the board orders, especially with the movements from one account to the other, or kind of through the reconciliation process. So, if it were structured like the board orders with a signature page at the bottom of it, I think that it could be included in that with as kind of like a board orders
I
package.
have to find out if it can be turned into a report like that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that other towns do that, but I'll find out more about that before I look at this.
The only other question I guess that I have is whether or not it would, just for the sake of continuity, having a policy of some sort on the books that at least puts a stake in the ground procedurally that this is a practice that we've adopted, so that it's a practice that's carried forward.
Perceived like a practice, not a policy. I heard multiple
Either a
words there.
procedure or a policy. I mean, I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other.
Like an internal controls policy.
Sure.
That's
Okay,
another
okay.
recommendation.
Okay.
Item on my list. These are procedures.
Sure.
Essentially.
Okay.
I guess short of that, it seems like it'd be appropriate to register an action acknowledging the receipt and adoption of the journal entries report as prepared by Kari. Everybody want to move something like that?
I'll move that.
I'll second that.
All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Sorry.
Thank goodness.
Aye, aye,
All
aye.
right, goodness.
And I'm back on time.
Man, good.
Come on.
Come on. Moving on to reports. We've got a financial report as of March 31st.
Yeah, so not many significant changes from the last time. We are 3/4 of the way through the year. The general government budget's on track. The highway department's running high on the expense side as it has been. We did in this past month have some unavoidable expenses for vehicle maintenance and some gravel. My estimate is we still have about $203,000 to spend and still be within, not the budget as it's written, but with the expansions, the additional grant money and the things that you approved. So it's, unfortunately, it was not a great month in April. So I think it's going to be hard to reach that, but we're doing our best. Yeah, I think that's it. Any questions you have? Fund balance is still strong. We have the biggest item coming up is the final education tax payment. And the state does something that final cash flow report, and there's always a difference between what we expect, the liability that's on the balance sheet now, and what we'll actually pay. It's usually in our favor, and sometimes it's tens of thousands of dollars. So it's it's a big deal when that report comes out. Impact on our fund balance, but we're in a pretty good place, I would say.
Great. Thank you, Kari. Tegan?
Yeah. I was out the start of last week, and then I came back. It's been a lot of reappraisal stuff since then. I'm not sure if you discussed this earlier in the meeting before I got here. Was that, yeah, so that's.
Happy to hear your side of it.
It's most people have been great. Like, they've been polite and patient, and we were worried that maybe people would be at it, but I haven't had any bad experiences. And Ed Clodfelter came in after Kari left today and just told me that Calais is great. Everyone's great. Everyone has been wonderful to work with. So that's really helpful. And then I had John McCullough talk me through my Lister card today so that I knew what all the categories meant. So if someone calls and can't get a meeting with NEMRIC or can't get one right away, I at least have the ability to tell them, well, this is what this means, this is what this means, and this is a little bit about how they came to it, just because that's all a lot of people want. And some people do have specifics of, I don't have 3 bathrooms, I have 1 bathroom, and that obviously NEMRIC has to change, and they do. But that seems to be going smoothly. Things have been going well with Meadow. Meadow was introduced to our cemetery files and thinks they may have found a project to work on, which we're all very excited about. So we are looking at cemetery stuff and talking to the cemetery commission about getting going on that. Meadow and I were talking a little bit about using some of our vault fund, the reserve fund, to maybe get a good scanner so we can scan more of our land records instead of shopping them out to other companies that will scan things and digitize them. Meadow's had some experience with it and with archiving in general, and Meadow, feel free to jump in if you want to add things here, but it's exciting because I think between the 2 of us and the cemetery commission, we could really make some good progress on this. That's exciting.
That is great.
Yeah. I think that's about it for that. Meadow and I are going to a clerk training on Wednesday down in Fairleigh. So I always learn a lot and enjoy myself down there, and so we'll have a good time.
Great.
Thank you to you.
Mm-hmm.
Corey, circle back to town admin.
Yeah, I wanted to start by talking about Doug Lilly's hay bale. So I was made aware of that almost 2 weeks ago, and he happened to call. I asked him, why did you do that? I think at the time there were 2, actually, John reported. I confirmed there's only 1 as of Friday. But I asked him why he put them there, and he said to protect them from the snowplows, which I didn't really get into with him, but it seemed out of season. And then I encouraged him to move them. I guess he moved 1, so. I think our options are to do nothing, to issue a fine based on the letter that we sent him, or we could send him the letter again. Is there a few options?
I will open it up to other select board members for question or comment.
I wonder if it's
Kind of tired of playing the game.
Well, I can weigh in that I think that one, that's frustrating. 2, I appreciate the documentation of it with a picture. So please extend that to the road crew. I think any instance like this in general, it really kind of helps capture the issue in a place and time so that we can have a more meaningful conversation around it. I also think that we need to stay consistent. And I guess I'm concerned with as much of an effort as we've tried to put forward in being consistent in the position about putting objects and items in the right of way. We've been following up on a number of those, and I just don't see any other way forward here other than, I think the middle ground is to issue the same letter a second time, and
with a new deadline, I would add.
With a new deadline,
He's
and I
responded
guess
to those before.
if now that this is such a kind of a recurring issue, if we wanted to give ourselves more actionable options in the future, we could add something in the letter that says that future occurrences will not come with a warning.
Yeah.
And then we'll exercise our right to issue a fine.
I like that.
I think those are good suggestions. I did hear him say that there's a court case pending, and there's a court case. So I just wondered if there was a reason he was putting it back out to demonstrate.
I think that he might be referring to a boundary line issue.
Oh, okay, all right,
Right.
okay, terrific.
Yeah. But a conservative approach would be to reissue the warning with a new date. Because
Yes.
it didn't comply with the last letter.
Right.
I'm not saying you have to do that, but that is a conservative approach.
Well, and we issued the letter after we had made multiple requests. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, and that
I made one, and he was very clear that he wasn't going to do anything.
Courtesy.
Although he did do something.
How long were you thinking about giving him?
Anticipate that it takes a few days for the letter to get there, probably no more than 10 days, like 2 weekends or something.
I think coordinating it with our next meeting such that we would be able to entertain taking action, issuing a fine or something like that, and by the next meeting, I think would be appropriate, so whatever that time
May 11th, that morning or something. Okay, so do you want this letter to come from me or from, say, Jordan?
What was the previous one?
From the select board.
As a whole?
Yeah.
I think we maintain that personally,
that's
but
fine.
I know then logistically, we could review it by email, or we were not permitted to really do that, yeah. So then it extends the time.
So we had a special meeting online or something like that. I didn't see.
So if we agree as a select board that we're gonna have it signed only by, I don't know, you and Jordan, or something like that, are we permitted to?
Issue the letter? I think the letter could basically refer to the last letter.
Yes.
And here's the language of that letter, but it's an update. I personally think it would be fine coming from me, and I could have Jordan sign off on it.
Okay.
But I would just
I think moving it along is
reiterating and saying here's the
Authorizing you to take that action on behalf of the select board.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's reasonable.
Okay. Are there other items in?
Yeah, so just a few other things I wanted to say. Here's one. So the right-of-way ordinance allows temporary signs without a permit, right? You can put a temporary sign on the side of the road. I got an email from a very frustrated resident who says that the interior painting signs, so you know these kinds of,
right.
They're like campaign signs, but they're like for businesses.
Yeah.
I guess there's some up on Lightning Ridge and Adamant Roads. I don't know, I'm curious about that, but they've been up for 2 weeks so far. So does that qualify as temporary?
Vermont state law has a designation of what temporary signage is. I don't remember the number of days, but there is a state.
All right, I'll look at that and
law.
bring this back to you.
Right, I feel like it's common for it to be up sort of for the duration of a job.
Yeah.
That's what it is,
Yeah.
and if it's a 3-week job, it's up for 3 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay. James did mention the local hazard mitigation plan. There's a public meeting on May 16th at 6 p.m. Be about an hour or so. Be identifying hazards, which could become priorities in the plan. And then a reminder that Scott Passage's memorial is here on Saturday at 4. There hasn't been a lot of publicity about that.
I am not able to be there.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I have another similar situation I have to attend, so.
That's all I got.
I feel like it is widely known, no?
I don't know. Barbara expressed some concerns.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think Charlotte put out all those cards back in March, and the concern might be that people stuck them on a fridge and maybe don't remember.
Don't remember.
Hmm.
I've been seeing them around, so it's been a pretty steady reminder for me. But well, I hope was well attended and certainly warranted.
Did you mention Claire Haskell?
I did not.
Claire Haskell resigned from the Conservation Commission.
I did not see that come through.
It just came in today.
Oh, okay.
And yeah.
Should we put that on a future agenda?
Yeah, I think we should put that on the next agenda, absolutely.
She emailed me and Neil both today.
Thanks.
And her term expires in 2028, at least according to this, so it's a good name time.
So that, I guess just to be proactive, would make sense to add that to the roles of folks that will be soliciting appointment for.
Part of the ask.
Yeah. Great. And, right. So we have an executive session coming up next.
Sorry, before that, can
Yeah.
I just provide a very minor update from the Friends of Calais?
Yeah,
They asked me to share that their donated paintings to the Historical Society from the Bassage family are going to be hung in this room, one in the back, I'm sorry, two in the back and one here on this front wall, depending on what you think of as front and back.
Those are Bessie Drennan paintings?
Bessie Drennan paintings, yes. And they're working, with the Historical Society to make that happen, but they just wanted to make sure since the select board manages the building overall, or it's a town building, they wanted to make sure that we were aware. So, I didn't feel like it was, it was just sort of Friends of Calais and, Friends of Calais Town Hall and the Historical Society saying, please let them know. I was like, okay.
It's good, the instinct is to communicate to the select board.
Yes.
They've been very good about talking through scheduling with us too, with the play going on upstairs, communicating with us, communicating with other boards, committees, and commissions. I've been really pleased with how Nancy has kept us in the loop.
It sounds like it's been going well, and Nancy, they are doing some work to do some cleanup to what the electrical work and so forth, and some painting and so forth that is in line with what we've already agreed to in the past. So.
Okay.
So before we go into executive session, I just kind of wanted to raise kind of a personal note, and then I guess maybe kind of dips into more of a leadership note. So after our last meeting, we adopted the letter to the school board, and while I think the intent of that letter was captured pretty well. This isn't a criticism of how it was written, but there were some nuanced, it was my understanding that the general consensus is that we were speaking on behalf of the voters and not necessarily taking a position as a board on the matter. And it's a nuanced difference, but the semantics of the letter read as if the board was taking a position. I think we've had some really good dialogue around that, and having observed how that very careful difference then gets leveraged as a representation during the school board meeting, that just became problematic for me. And I really enjoy the consensus and dialogue that we reach as a board. And I didn't articulate that maybe as strongly in the moment because, I enjoy the collaborative nature of this group. But from kind of a leadership perspective, I do think that it is okay for for us to take positions that represent what we feel our constituents are and what our personal feelings are. And disagreeing is not always a criticism, it's a healthy thing to do. So I don't think that there's anything to do about it at this point in time, though I would say that, you know, I would expect us in the future, should a group of individuals come to us to represent their position outside of our community in a similar capacity, we would be equitable in our consideration in doing so. If that were for a minority of the population as much as for the minority of the voters. So this is obviously a pretty limited audience for making that point, but it did kind of linger on me quite a bit, just kind of seeing how that stuff really matters and is worth being careful of. So with that, we'll move on to our executive session. So this is going to be that last agenda item for the evening. I'll invite those to be dismissed and recording to stop. There are not any anticipated actions following this, and it's a personnel and contract related matter. So. So with that, I would entertain a motion to enter an executive session under Vermont VSA 313A 1A relative to the board's consideration of contract terms and personnel matters, associated personnel matters, and extend an invitation of Daryl Garland to join us, as well as Kari, into executive session to discuss the matter.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.